you.
Well, thank you guys for being here, and looks like today will be the last reasonably cool day. And I say that a little tongue in cheek, because I think 93 or whatever is not necessarily cool, but
As I sit here with a sweatshirt on.
I know it.
Well, Fiesta starts tomorrow,
So
so
it has to be hot.
it has to be
Yes.
hot.
there you go.
Exactly.
You said that the other night. That is.
It is a rule,
It
I
is a
think.
I'm going to start, for those of you who don't know, Mr. Wedding, our Director of Business and Finance, resigned last Thursday. So right at the moment, I am helping to cover that. And we will do the best that we can. So if you need something, I will get it to you as quickly as I can. I'm still trying to go through everything just to find where everything's at. So I apologize for that. Certainly not you guys' fault. We'll get through. It's all right. That stuff happens. And we'll just start getting into stuff. Well, as far as items discretionarily, do you have a specific thought on?
Our specific proposal is the same as it was last year. So it's everything rolls into leave. So right now we have 5 days of discretionary leave, 7 days of sick leave. The teachers can put in when we go into the system, you know, if it's a doctor's appointment or something like that, then we can put in sick leave. If it's not, then we can put in discretionary leave. Our proposal is that all 12 of those are just leave. However, there was concern by the district about, well, what about the buildup that teachers already had? And so our proposal was to just leave those as sick. So the same with the way it works now, you work through the 12 that you currently have. And then once you get that 12, it's sick leave. It's not discretionary, it's sick. So that is how you use it. And then the rollover would work the same way it does now.
And there are some, and these are just food for thought things, is one of the things that came up or was thought of was, okay, well, what happens with sick leave buyback if we don't have sick leave?
Well, I would think that we would then maybe just change the number that you could buy back.
Right.
So we could leave that the same. So instead of calling it sick leave buyback, we could call it leave buyback. You can buy up to so many days back.
Right. And I'm thinking more in terms of not retirement or anything like that. That I think.
Right. You're talking the year-to-year buyback.
Right.
Yeah. And we're not trying to put a crimp in any of those wheels or anything like that. So if we want, right now you can buy up to 7 back because we have 7 sick days. So if a teacher didn't use any sick days,
right,
they could buy, is it 7 or is it the full 12?
We've done the full 12.
We've done the full 12.
Yeah, it just to try to be fair to everybody.
Okay.
Because there are times that folks use.
You can tell I haven't done it.
They will use discretionary for something, or they'll use sick leave for something that they probably could or maybe should have used discretionary. You know, I don't usually, all I see is what comes in at the end and everything like that. So I don't know all the specifics.
I mean, we are more than willing to talk about talk about that and how that would go on and work. I wouldn't think that you could, if we're calling it sick leave buyback, that those banked ones could be touched. We would keep it the same way it is now.
The process would be this. The process would be the same.
We just call it something.
The terminology.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good question because I'm totally naive at this. So say like you work like half a day and you have a doctor's appointment, how does that come off on?
It's a half day.
Just,
So we
okay, so you can do half. You
So
can
you
do,
might just need an hour off and we have to take the whole
Half day.
afternoon off.
So you
Oh.
either have to do
Four,
half or
like 4
full.
hours or,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Now, and I'll say this with e-finance, which I am becoming far more involved with suddenly in the last week than I would have ever dreamt of. one of the things that we may end up having to do is we may end up, now this is you're gonna have to follow me on this, bird walk. One of the things that we have discovered is that we may have to look at getting a different time clock system. But what that does is, I think, if we end up doing that, there wouldn't be a reason, if I understand right, and again, I'm not promising this, but I think there wouldn't be any reason why we couldn't break it down into smaller incremental timeframes. And I don't necessarily have any issue with that. I know the practice has always been here to be, it's a half day or it's a full day. There may be a way to do that. That would be my hope for us to do that. And I don't want to, in the effort to be as transparent as possible, some of it deals with if we feel like we have to go to that system, then I think it may make it much easier to come up with smaller increments, if that makes sense.
That's actually something that we as a committee have talked about. Right now, if I have to take a half day, I don't care if the doctor's appointment's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 1:30 or 2, because I have to take that full half day. Where if I know that I could take off just that last hour,
Absolutely.
I might try to push it.
Yeah.
And if we even do in building coverage for that hour, that's still less than having a sub for.
Well, that was
What it
my
would be.
question. If you broke it down to hourly, are those able to be covered without having to bring in a sub all the time?
Typically they are.
Yeah.
Because we cover them in-house. And I don't think any of us disagree with you. I think part of it is the system that we've had with the map system was very antiquated. And it was very cumbersome and very difficult to operate. And that made it, there were challenges. This system appears to be, and I think once we get through all the bumps in the road that how that goes, I think when we get to the end of the tunnel, I think we'll all like it a lot better. But along the way, you find out things like this. Okay, the time system we have now is not going to make us more efficient than what it did as far as time. But if we were to go, and what we're looking at is a system in which initially it would be hourly, and then we would probably look to add everyone in the time system. Not that you would be clocking in and clocking out. I don't want you to think that. But what it would do is it has the ability to, let's say you did an extra duty, something extra duty, you worked a ball game, whatever. You would be able to go ahead and punch in your number with the platform. It drops down a menu and says, what extra duty are you doing? And
So you wouldn't have those forms that you fill out.
Exactly. And what would happen is all of this communicates directly with the platform that does all that. So right now, all the extra duty time sheets that we do, and really all the hourly time sheets that we do, have to be hand put into the system, which is just silly. I mean, that's not the world we live in anymore, right? So we are looking at that, but obviously it has to be something we can afford to get and everything. But in the end, I think one of the side benefits to it may well be that we would be able to potentially look at being able to use smaller increments as far as that. Now that's on the horizon, so it's
Right.
not, and it's something that we would just, if we're able to do it, we would just do it. That's, we would just make that work. What I would like to say is let's set aside discretionary leave for a little, not forever, but just for a little bit today. and maybe we come back to it here in just a minute. Bereavement leave. I think that the board is willing to consider offering bereavement leave to you guys, and obviously not having to be charged to sick or discretionary. The limit may be 3, and we would use just the same language. The only thing in that section of the negotiated agreement, and we can cuss and discuss this, would be that we would eliminate to be deducted from sick leave. It would just be done that way. And we track it, with the new system. I think it'll actually be a whole lot easier than with some of the older system. And we can visit somewhere down the road how that ends up and everything. Do you guys feel comfortable with 3 days?
So, we almost had exactly what you had.
See, that's what happens.
So our thought was use the immediate leave that is in the current language. Our thought was also 3 days. And just as a reminder for anybody who is listening, that does not mean that when we're only talking immediate that, a family friend or somebody passes, then you can't go. No, it just means that just comes out of sick.
Right,
So-
right, absolutely.
We did have, after our discussion amongst our group, we did have an unfortunate thought that we have unfortunately had students that we had in class that our current students have passed.
Sure.
And we were hoping to get that added as 1 day to be able to go. And it would be only for the teachers who currently have that student in class.
Right. And this is part of this is a clarification question.
Yes.
Right now, when that happens, if I'm hoping the answer to this is yes. So if it's not, tell me. I'm hoping that we have in the past, when we have that happen, if the services are on obviously school day, that we have done everything we could to accommodate everybody to be able to go to it.
Have you had to take time off?
Okay, first off, does anybody know? Well, okay, so Sarah, who is also on the committee, who was not able to be with us tonight, she had a student pass last year, I believe, but it was during Christmas break. And so she didn't have to, but it did, because of that, it did get her to thinking, if this happens and how would we handle it? And I know that we have had students in the past pass, but I don't know how it was handled. I know that teachers have been able to go, but I don't know if they have had to use their leave.
So we need to.
And I would say,
And
we shouldn't
again,
have, my opinion is we shouldn't have ever charged someone because for a couple of reasons. One, they're your student. Second, you're also doing it when you were there. You're also there as a representative of the district, and I don't think that we would want to.
No, and we allow the students to attend
Right.
without being,
Right.
so.
I honestly, I don't know.
Let me do
Okay.
But
this.
putting
Let
that in
me-
there would
But
be.
just so
Yeah.
it is, so they know. So
I don't think we have charged anybody. I don't remember having seen anything.
Okay.
But again, if they used leave, it doesn't necessarily designate that that's what it's for. Then it could have been that way, but I'll write that down. Here's what I would ask. Do you feel comfortable? We'll check on that. But are you comfortable to maybe say that we have a tentative agreement on the bereavement otherwise?
Yes.
You guys good with that?
Yes.
Okay. I will find out or try to on the, I think that's something we can manage, whether we get that added or not. I think that the consensus from all of us would be that, you know, we shouldn't be charging somebody if they're going to a student's funeral.
Agree.
You know, especially those are tough situations. We want to handle those the right way. Duty-free lunch. I think we're interested in that discussion to go to 30 minutes. The big thing comes back down to the 5 minutes that we lose that we count for the 1,116 for
Total hours.
total hours.
Well, here's the deal. You're actually losing a lot more than that, because right now you have elementary teachers that are seeing students 20 minutes before they're supposed to be seeing students every day. So like in my building, the doors open at 8:30 and the kids go straight to classroom. So even though we're contracted at 8:30 and class doesn't start until 8:50, we get kids in our room at 8:30.
Right.
So
I think we're
those-
talking two different things.
Not really. So those hours, like teachers already have contact time with kids. The district just is not counting it because the start time isn't until 8:50,
Correct.
We're still with them.
but we're still with them.
Right, but we can't,
I'm just saying,
unless we put that to where that's when the students start, we can't count those hours for the state. We can't count those
Why are we coming into our
minutes.
buildings then?
I'm sorry.
Then why are we having students come into the building that early?
because right now we have teachers with contact time with students that is way longer than what
Our school day.
our school day is.
I'm just saying that we can't.
I understand
know
that, but that
we
is
can't count that.
that's where we're coming from, where teachers have given, especially these last 2 years. Now, I don't know what this next year is going to look like, if more buildings will go back to having an assembly at the beginning and they're not in classrooms. I don't know. But I know that we don't have tech anymore, so that's 25 minutes of extra contact time a week that we didn't have before. And now, granted, that is already added in our contact time, but that's classroom teacher contact time. So classroom teachers have 25 extra minutes a week that they didn't have before.
At the elementary?
At the elementary
Sorry to
level.
interrupt,
Yeah,
but
sorry, at
at
the elementary level, 25 minutes. That, and this is classroom teacher. So it was still student contact time, but I'm just talking classroom teacher time. And then with that extra 20 minutes sometimes in the morning, you know, at the high school and at the middle school, the doors open and kids can come in, but they kind of loiter. Like they don't always go straight to class. Teachers can still go and make copies. But once those doors open at 8:30 and you've got a kid in your room, you can't go and make copies unless someone is standing out there and trying to watch two rooms at the same time. Like, you're on duty. And so even though our handbook says 8:30, most teachers are there by 8:15 in order to accommodate that. And so I guess that goes on with our other 15 minutes. So like on E, you have hours of work. You're already getting that from teachers. You're already getting an extra 15 minutes.
Right, a couple of things. The 25 minutes for tech, we don't gain those 25 minutes.
No, and I clarify, I know, but it's classroom teacher contact time where you are working on
Right.
your basic skills, which was what the goal was.
Right.
So you have that, those classroom teachers in the elementary level have that contact time. Now, none of this, except for the contact time would affect the high school and the middle school differently. And I'll get to that in a minute. But that did increase contact time at elementary. And elementary has been hit the hardest with contact time and with taking plan time and taking free time away in comparison to secondary. these last couple of years.
Post-COVID, I'm sorry.
Post-COVID,
Okay.
COVID and post-COVID.
Okay.
Elementary's been hit the hardest.
Because you don't have the meetings in the morning or where all the kids go.
The
to
assembly.
The assemblies, yeah, thank you.
When you used to not be able to get into the elementary buildings until like, I
Right,
didn't open those doors till like 8:45.
yeah.
Right, and we don't know what's gonna happen this year. We don't know if, I mean, is every building still gonna do breakfast? Are they not gonna do breakfast? Like, we don't know. We don't know what that's gonna look like. We don't know if it's going to go back to the way it was. We don't, but in 2 of your buildings that are Title I's, their doors are still gonna open at 8:30 in the morning.
So what would happen, and this is just trying to, if you did start time at 8:30, so you get credit for those 20 minutes, would it extend?
Yeah,
know,
it would
would the
just back
same
it up
thing
because they
be-
open the doors at 8:30 so that students can eat breakfast.
Oh,
And so before, they were opening the doors at 8:30 in only like 2 schools. Because those were the Title I
the
schools
ones that have.
and kids could get off. My understanding is at the other schools, kids would sit on the bus.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They did at Elmont.
they did it.
So I don't know
Rochester.
why we're picking them up better than just sit.
Well, because some of them on the bus don't
Yeah.
eat
But
breakfast.
then,
Not everybody does though.
but we have kids sitting for, 20 minutes on a bus. Why are we getting?
So when they
tired?
come in-
No, you're fine.
Just trying to-
We would like you to
I'm trying to
understand what's
spit.
going on. So questions are great.
So when they go in, some go eat breakfast and some go to the class.
Correct. Now, in those schools that have breakfast, there are usually paras or a principal or somebody is covering that one. It's not a classroom teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a certified teacher covering that breakfast.
And when you had the assemblies, they would go to like the gym.
So when we
or-
had the assemblies, they would go to the gym in the morning. There would still have to be certified teachers within the gym, but it wasn't every single teacher. So you had a duty.
Okay,
And it was just kind of understood that depending on the building, like I guess some buildings did it where you did it all week, but then you only did it like twice a year.
Okay.
And then in my building, we had it so where you did it once a week. If, depending on what duty you had, you might have had it once a week. But the rest of the 4 days, you had your time to use. And that was just kind of accepted as at other duties as assigned type of a thing. The little clause in the contract. It's the continual thing, and I guess it's the unknown for us on, well, what's gonna happen?
Right, and I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. I don't want you to think that, but for extending the lunch hour to 30 minutes, the big catch up for us is, I don't disagree that you got kids and teachers see them much longer than that time. But for us to count that to the 1,116 hours, we would have to say that school starts at whatever time. And short of doing that, and that means then you have every kid that is there for that time.
Right.
So there, I hear you,
And
I hear you, but there.
And I understand where you're coming from, but
They're two separate things.
we are not willing to extend the duty day 5 minutes to get 5 minutes of lunch.
That at this time, we wouldn't
Okay.
be willing to add the 5 minutes to lunch. So we can just table that for now. Okay.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Do you have a solution? Like, do you have an idea of how we could fix that morning thing?
I mean,
have you guys, or is breakfast the problem? I'm not saying that that's.
It's
the
not a
problem,
problem.
but I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean?
I think it all depends. You know, I think a lot of times teachers want that time. We're torn. I will tell you that as a staff and as teachers, we're probably torn because those schools who do a morning assembly, or when we did a morning assembly, they're, you've got K through 6 in a gym. It's loud. And then they all have to walk down to their classroom as one big, as big groups. And even though they're with their class, you're walking down and you're as a group. And it takes some of those kids to get a while settled back down, where if you come straight in,
Right.
your, you just start the day a little bit calmer because you're not all coming in all at the same time and everyone's putting their bag away and it's just not quite as much chaos. But then you don't have that time.
Right.
And I'd say another problem, like if you let the buses in at 8:30 and all the kids are in the classroom, that doesn't mean every kid comes in. So you can't really start a lesson of any sort because there's
Right.
car riders that don't come in
Coming in,
until.
right.
But you're providing them something to do. You
Yeah.
can't have kids sitting for 20
Well,
minutes.
And like we did assembly partway through the year, and partway through the year we did, depending on what COVID was. So not every school is doing the same thing.
And so is this mainly a concern at elementary or does it happen at middle school?
Are you talking about coming in the building early or? the
Yeah, that
lunch?
extra time in the
No,
morning.
our doors do not open anymore until 7:35.
Okay.
Now, years ago, we used to open up. It was open, but it is now 7:35.
Or high school kids to come in to get home for math lab, libraries open at 7:15.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah,
do
because they have
that.
morning ASAP, is it, or morning,
And that's-
On after school, that's more.
yeah,
Math lab's the morning,
Okay.
that starts at
Yeah.
7.
okay.
Okay.
Well, that doesn't mean that a kid, if they needed something, couldn't go up to the
Right,
class.
right. But
But
it's
our
not,
kids aren't released from the commons until 7,
So that was, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
and then they have 10 minutes.
thank you.
Okay.
We're
Yeah, is that?
trying to
Yeah.
wrap this around our brain.
Thanks.
But we also have
No,
a different,
you're right.
we have a different clientele.
Run
We don't
this
have the
show.
kids that.
Right. Most middle school and high schoolers
That is
don't
why I
want to go to
teach
class until
secondary.
the bell.
Right.
like,
Right, exactly.
Liquidated damages, we had 5 last year.
Yes. So we had a question.
Sure.
Why do you think people are breaking contract? Like what, they give an exit survey, right? Like you guys, so like
Wait,
on, like
I will
why
tell
are
you,
they
we
saying?
get
they're leaving?
Maybe a third of the folks will actually pull them out. What I do is I request for them to do the exit interview digitally and then set up a meeting with me. And the number that will actually set up and come in and talk to me are probably less than 10%. And we probably get a third that actually fill out the exit interview. I'm not going to force someone to do that because we don't get good data that way. It doesn't do us any good. So I think there are a couple of things that happened. I think that this was a trend that started before the pandemic. But I think, like a lot of things, it was on steroids once the pandemic started. I think that there has just been this shift that it's okay to do that. I will tell you that as a teacher, I worked at a district that didn't have liquidated damages, but it never even occurred to me that I could do that, that it was, that was a thing. It wasn't possible. And the only folks that I had heard of that did it at that time were folks that had like spouses that were in the
Spouses moved and
military
got a
and
different
stuff like
job.
that.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different deal. That's a separate situation. But I think that it's just a shift from a societal standpoint that folks are more willing to not be as, I don't know that committed is the right word, or concerned about whether or not they break that contract.
If I can give us the State Department perspective of things, is that COVID broke a lot of people. Like they just wanted to get out of the school
Education.
buildings, not education altogether. Because I know at the State Department, we had a lot of applications coming from people that just wanted to get out of the district but still be in education, because they had papers and such. But the State Department doesn't, for the most part, we wouldn't allow anybody to break their contract. We would hire them, but we would just wait until their contract ended. So we had a lot of people start like July, or we have some starting in August. But from my understanding, just knowing why people would break the contract over the last couple years is because of the pandemic and the stress that you guys had to endure.
But how many of them are actually going though to other districts? I think we need to look at that though too.
That
That
might
aren't
be true.
getting just out of education, they're going to other districts. I
Do you think it's
that-
because of
Well,
salary or?
And that's a good
Pay
point.
and.
That's a
We
good
need to
point.
look
I
at that.
think the other part of it is there has typically been, I suppose, an unwritten agreement between districts that they wouldn't recruit people that they were under contract. I know, I said, there has
Used
been,
to be.
there has been,
Used to be.
but that has also changed. And I think you saw that in the last 10 years start to shift to where as the need for teachers became greater because there were fewer kids graduating from college and education, more and more people were willing to say, well, I know we've kind of agreed that we wouldn't, do that, but we're going to make an exception in this instance. And then that instance became 10 instances, and that 10 became, it just.
And that was something the board asked too, is out of all that left, what's a percentage of who's staying in education, like going to other districts and.
And the vast
I can't remember
majority
what.
have stayed in.
Right.
Now we had, I think 2 of the 5 did not go to school districts. But 3 of them did. So, and I know that our folks sometimes hear from me that, if we have a position that we have open and it's a weird time for whatever the reason, I tell them, there's probably not going to be a lot of applicants out there. I would tell you this, the last couple of years especially, we'll get some applicants. Now, they're not always very good. And there's a lot of times there's a reason, but that has changed to where before I would have told you, well, we won't get anybody, unless somebody that's retired or again, somebody that has a spouse that moves and they move to the area, one of those type of things where it's an anomaly. Well, it's less anomalous now because now all of a sudden you have all these folks that, again, it's just a change with the mindset. And that may not be a great answer, but short of anything else, I think that's part of it. And I will tell you, if you guys aren't interested in that, that's okay. We can not do that. But it benefits you guys.
Well, I have a
more than
question.
it does.
So we have the different tiers and it starts out with, as far as when, remind me when, I don't have the contract pulled up. Do you have the contract pulled up? I'm trying to figure out when the first tier starts.
It starts from the first day that, okay.
And it's that weird,
The district has to let people, the
Yeah,
district has to let folks know that by the 3rd Friday in May, and then teachers have 14 days after that. So it's not a static day. I think this year it was like June 4th, something like that. So then June 5th is where we would start to have our liquidated damages.
You have 1 to 30 days.
Yeah.
And 31 to 60, 61 to 90, 91.
Steve likes that good. You're so great. Doggone, man, you're good.
I think raising it will deter them. If they went out, they're gonna.
If somebody wants out bad enough, it doesn't matter how much the cost is going to be. And if you guys tell us, we think it will work if we raise it to, this is a little bit tongue in cheek, so take it for what it's worth. If we raise it to $5,000 from day one, well, maybe that'll work. Well, I don't know that we want to do that because there are mitigating circumstances and everything else. But this is one that we have brought each of the last couple of years because the hardship, and I truly mean this, falls on you guys. Because you're the ones that have to pick up the load for that person that, and I know that this may hurt some people's feelings, but abandoned their colleagues. And I know as a teacher, I couldn't have in good conscience done that.
Do you, I know that you had said that in a previous meeting that you had said that when someone has to break a contract that you feel they should get charged no matter, like, period.
Right,
And
and
I guess my question is that we don't necessarily think this is like a bad thing, but I don't want to put an undue burden on somebody because their spouse is moving or something happens and they, like, it's out of their control. And I guess I'm wondering, like, do you go ahead, and if it was that kind of situation where, would you go ahead and still do the liquidated damages? Or is that one of those situations where we understand this is not something that you planned on doing?
We try to, there are a million things that can happen. And there are times, and I'm trying to think of one in particular right now. I can't think of one here. But there are times when there are instances where there are factors that play into it that are beyond the person's control. If your spouse is in the military, which is always an easy one, and they're transferred because they don't, that's not one of those things you get to choose. Then that's not one where I think that person should necessarily be penalized. It's beyond their control.
So do we do case by case or do we have a
And-
section?
And maybe what we put in there is we put a line to the effect of each situation will be, and I'm just throwing, it's not the specific words, on the merits of each particular situation to determine it. For consistency, yes, it's easy to say we do it for everyone.
Right.
I can recall, and this has been many years, and I was in another district, but we had a very successful women's basketball coach and business teacher that got a job with a college team. And because of the way that the college position was worded, they charged liquidated damages.
Right.
For, again, extremely successful high school coach to take the leap to college, which is, in the end, that's great PR for a district.
Sure.
That's kind of what you want them to do, but again, was charged on the way out. I don't think you guys would want that kind of thing. I know we wouldn't either.
Right.
I think I don't really have a problem with increasing that. What I would like us more to focus on is why our teachers are leaving. Like, why are our teachers breaking our contracts? I think
Would you
that's
ever
what.
say no, like, no, you can't do that? Or if I just was gonna pay the $2,000, they'd be like, here's my check, I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, do we ever say, like, cause, or maybe I'm wrong, is there a stipulation of where a district can like, hold a teacher's license up for breaking contracts or anything like that? Or,
Yes, but it's more complicated than
okay,
that.
I'm still learning, sorry, I'm
What
asking
I
all the
would,
questions.
what I would tell you is that what happens if you use liquidated damages, then the state's not going to be okay with you trying to have their
Oh,
license.
yeah.
Okay.
So what if,
We, like Jill said, we as a whole, our kind of point of view was, we want to make the contract better and stronger for the teachers that we have. If you don't want to be here,
I understand.
then pay these liquidated damages. However, there are situations where it is out of their control, and that would be our only concern, is that.
Well, and we've got time on this one, because I'm gonna guess.
wording in?
Right, so maybe we come up with something, or you guys think of something too. I mean, trust me, there's only so much creativity in this old brain.
What's a good way we can gather that information without, just being completely open about it? Because I figured you guys would know more as teachers in the community of why teachers are leaving. I mean, salary and insurance, I get, but do they just really despise us board members and we're not, doing good for kids, or you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't gonna, but I'm just,
Or is it superintendent?
I mean, it's just
Is it
things like that.
administration? I mean, you guys know, you work with
Well-
them on it.
Sorry,
No, you're fine.
sorry.
I would tell you this, there's a couple of things that Brett Church at Emporia State is doing some stuff with school districts and obviously Emporia State to look at that. And the interesting thing is it's a combination of things. And I think it's as unique as the individual. And we've got an opportunity with EBS, which does research and data stuff, to participate in some things that may give us some insight into that. Now, it's that classic look. They're probably going to send you a couple of surveys, like you guys don't get enough surveys as it is, right? But that data could be beneficial. Now, I would tell you it's a little bit like exit interviews. Some of them, I think, the response that we get is completely honest and completely accurate. But we also get ones that you wonder why the person's leaving, because on that scale of 1 to 10, they're giving us 12s, So you take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. Sometimes the scale and the score is skewed because that person's upset because of something specific. That maybe he's in control of the district, maybe it's not something the district can control. And you hope that people will be honest, but it's just like when you guys get to deal with kids all the time. There are some of them that are going to be honest all the time, no matter what. There are some of them that are probably never going to be honest. And you have most of them that are mostly going to be, to the best of their ability and knowledge. I don't think this is a simple thing to answer, which is why not just in the state of Kansas, not just here for our purposes, but across the country, there are people asking the same question. Why don't kids want to go into education anymore? And why are people wanting to leave? And obviously we have kids that still graduate, and still want to be teachers, and they still want to do that, and that's good. But it's not as simple as salaries or benefits or hours that are worked, it's a compilation of a lot of things. It's more complicated than just saying if we fix item A, then everything will be okay. And that's unfortunate because we'd all like it to be just item A, because then you can address that and maybe things are significantly different. But how about we table that for now, maybe come back to it?
Yeah, we can talk
Look at
about
some words.
and look at
Yeah,
some wording
just
for
the
that, yeah.
And
Yeah.
you
But
guys
that's
think
the main
about
thing, right?
what you
The
would
wording
like,
of
what you
that.
would feel comfortable with it saying.
Yeah.
And do that. The 15 minutes to answer a couple of the questions. Busing, it'd be either at the start of the day or the end of the day, so busing doesn't play an issue. The principals haven't been on duty since we've talked about this, so they haven't necessarily had to discuss with them. And obviously we would want some input from you guys too on how it's distributed. But if you're not interested in it and it's a hard no, that's okay. Just say so and we can move on.
I'll repeat it. We feel like
You're already.
You're already
We're already
giving
doing
it.
it.
We're already doing it.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That kind of goes with the.
That's, you know, Liz, you know me, it's okay. I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. Leave accumulation totals. We would like the association to consider dropping the accumulated leave to 100 days. I think we had 90 last time.
Yeah.
And that didn't, I'll be honest with you, didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Those currently above 100, I think we would want to say would be grandfathered. We're not going to take those days away from somebody that's already got over 100.
That was a fairly long discussion for us. We were trying to figure out why someone would have that many and what you would do with that many and what the thoughts were and.
I just want to know how you get
How you get there?
How you get that many.
How you do there?
There aren't
I never would.
lots. They're not lots of them,
No,
but there are a few.
Mike?
Close them, they're around there.
we, as far as just the overall, don't have a problem with dropping accumulated day totals. Our initial thought was though, from dropping it from the 160, isn't it 160 right now? Well, 180 right now, to 120. Obviously still with the grandfather in for anybody who is above 120.
I think that's something that we could probably tentatively agree on if you guys are okay with that. Reduction in force.
So I guess I have one question before a comment, but my big question is why?
It's a good question.
I'm already cracking up.
I think
Why
the
include
initial,
evaluations or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the initial reason that we added it was just as an additional criteria. I'm just gonna speak for me. I don't know that if we're getting down to the 5th and 6th one, we probably have already figured it out by then.
Well, and that's kind of where we were going with it. We had a couple of thoughts. You can't really use reduction in force to get rid of a teacher that is a subpar teacher because we already have language in our contract and we already have procedures for that.
Right.
And our thought was that in our current climate, with the way teaching is and the way teachers are feeling right now, we didn't think that necessarily putting that type of language in our contract for part of reduction in force was a very positive thing to have in our contract.
How about we do this? We just withdraw that as
Okay.
an item. You guys okay with that?
Well, I asked that. I said, if we're gonna riff, we're gonna just do it, right? Like,
So right now, just for my clarification, you have evaluations,
Yes.
but they're not included
in the
in
reduction in force.
reduction.
Correct.
Yeah.
But they're like, okay, I get it.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of steps.
Yeah, they're,
Right.
it's,
Because
ours is pretty typical of most districts.
theoretically, what would happen is if you have a teacher who is struggling, they would go through those processes that were already in place
Right.
for,
They're gonna be on this, they're gonna be over here.
Yeah.
Not on the reduction in force. And really, the reduction in force should only happen if there were, if we lost, somehow we lost 600 students. That would be a potential.
we were potentially talking reduction in force during,
COVID.
no, during recession in 08.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That is how long I have
I've known you.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
So that was the last time I think we sat here and really talked
About
about reduction in force.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're okay with it. You guys good with it, we'll just take it off. Extra duty pay, the district board would like to increase all of the teacher academic extra duty pay to $20 per hour. It's currently $15.50. And along with that, the non-academic, where we have the 3 tiers, would all be at 1 tier at $15.50.
Okay, we have a counter that you're probably gonna have to think about. We like the 1 tier. We thought that made things much easier on everybody, knowing what to put and what not to put and what not, just 1 tier. But we have a different proposal for the amounts. So our proposal for the academic extra duty is $25 per hour. The extra duty tier, 20. And then if you put in classroom compensation in that whole sentence too.
That's on the next one.
I know, but they're,
Yeah.
can we say it anyway?
Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay. And then the substitute classroom compensation. Right now, summer school is 30 per hour, and we would like, since we are teaching kids and you are covering kids, we would like to see that. Then if you are covering for a class, to be the 30 also, to put it in line with teaching summer school.
Yeah, we will need to look at that and evaluate and figure out
Figures.
costs and stuff like that.
Yep.
If that's okay.
Say if you don't have extra duty forms, it probably pay for them.
Probably. If I didn't have to see all those extra duty forms, that would just make me happy enough that,
Those are duplicates.
yeah. Number of duty days. And I know this really dealt, you correct me if I'm wrong, dealt really about the online trainings and not having time being set aside specifically to be able to do that.
That was one of
Not
our,
necessarily all of the online, sorry, I
No,
just
go
spoke for you.
that was one of the major issues. But we also had talked about having a designated or a specific time for teachers to have classroom time.
Right.
And that was something that was said that would be expressed heavily
Right.
to the principals in the buildings.
And I think that you had mentioned that it was better last year than it had been. I think that was the.
Only in certain areas.
Right. After discussion with the superintendent and the board, we feel like that is something that can be corrected without going so far as to adding the part with the online trainings and everything in the negotiating agreement.
So a couple of concerns. We were told that last year, and we still had some issues this last year. But also I started thinking about
You did
it.
say it was better.
Well, it was
Maybe not
It was
every-
better for me. It was better for me, but I'm not a coach and I'm not a special education teacher.
Right.
And I like,
But better doesn't mean 100%.
no, it was better.
means it's an
It was
improvement.
better, but I started thinking about it. So after our last meeting, and I thought, okay, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, however long, we started getting all these different things, and we used to sit. Like, times in our back to school time were already carved out because someone presented to us.
Right, as opposed to the online.
Right, as opposed to the online. So before we had that time already, like it was guaranteed that you had to go through those trainings, and you went through those trainings because someone sat there and presented to you. And well, yes, I could have maybe thought of better uses of my time sometime. Those were already, it was something we didn't have to worry about. Like it wasn't something that we had to use our
But
brain
there
time
weren't
for or whatever.
conflicts.
There weren't
Well,
conflicts.
it's kind of ironic because you put it online to make it more convenient for people, but yet, for us, unfortunately, it's kind of become less convenient.
And I guess that's where our big concern is because it's like, okay, well, now we don't have to schedule a speaker and we don't have to worry about people going from building to building to building. And having this whole big schedule of principals figuring out, okay, well, now this person's coming in, so we're gonna switch gears and go to that, training really quick. And I get that that is a huge load off of people's shoulders as far as being able to do that. But I just figure maybe the load has just shifted. And so while
It went from
it went from admin needing to make sure all the schedules lined up and everybody, and you didn't have coaches meetings and you didn't have spend meetings and that they were all in those meetings so that everyone could get those state required trainings. It now just got shifted to the teacher to make sure that they did those state required meetings. For some,
Well, if
yes,
you're,
for some.
right.
And so I guess that is our big concern, is that
You want your dedicated time to be in your classroom for this time with no other interruptions.
correct.
Correct. Yes.
Let's put that aside for now, because I don't know that we're going to solve that one. Just to give you a little bit of information on health insurance, their last bid was down to 26%.
Keep going.
Yeah, that's-
Yay.
that was not exact. My description was a little more colorful. And so that we do have a bid that we are getting from United Health and Cigna. And I will also tell you that Cigna is a question mark because Blue Cross Blue Shield is notorious for having other people bid, and then they want to see what the bid is, and then they go 1% lower.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in our discussions, I haven't got this yet, but that Cigna will offer their bid to us on the provision that we agree that we will take the lowest bid. Well, we'll see. We'll see how things play out. But we're still in the process. We originally planned on open enrollment for the first 2 weeks in August, which I don't like that, but we start September 1st. And it takes a while for the white glove folks to put the information packet all together and get it to whoever it goes to. That's way above my head, right? But we have got them all to agree to allow us to push it back a little bit. So it'd be like the 11th through like the 24th. For open enrollment, it will be a little later, which I prefer anyway. But still, they will give us a priority to get the information so that everybody will still be okay September 1st. That gives us a little more time to negotiate with them. And try and,
Is there a way to ever lock it in for a 3-year contract? So you don't have to do this every year.
they typically won't do that because of the same reason that they came to us with a 40.7% increase. Because it depends on, are you gonna have, can we guarantee them that we won't have $1.5 million claim in the next 3 years? No, we can't do that. I mean, that's the reason to get insurance in the first place. And the challenge really is they will only go year to year because while they may say differently, they're making money and they're making lots of it. But the large claims, they don't want, they're hedging their bets. Yeah, because I would love that. Trust me, if I didn't have to do this every year, you guys, there's no telling what you might ask for that I'd be like, yeah, we gotta do it, right? But they make me cranky. And I will tell you that that's the reason that they won't, is because there's too many variables that are costly to them. And if they have a claim that's substantial and it's going to fall off, at a certain point, they'll consider that. But if they have a claim, and of course, they have a lot more of the information on what the condition, I don't know who it is or what the conditions are or anything like that, then if it's one that they know will be ongoing, well, then they sure don't want to do that. And the other hand is we don't want to be in a position where we lock in for 3 years and maybe we would have a better deal somewhere else. I've never been anywhere where it went down.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, we've never had a better deal.
I have a new.
But
another
I
new
do know
question.
that there have been times where with some pools and some districts that they've actually had, now it's, when I say it, you're talking a percent. You're talking 1.5%.
Right.
You're not talking 40%.
Right.
But and typically it deals with pools.
You had mentioned the last time that we met that you had been looking at a pool. And wanted to- Then someone had asked me, and so I'm asking you, you know, the state pool is always thrown out.
Right.
And I didn't know if we could, like, how that all goes and how that, you were looking at whatever pool you were looking at.
Yeah, here are the downside to either if you go with the state
Mhm.
or if you go with a pool is right now we have 4 plans, the $500, $1,000, $1,500 high deductible. And we're able to negotiate some other specifics, whether it be the drug, whatever the case may be. We have some autonomy in that because we have, essentially we are our own pool.
Mhm.
If we become members, we lose some of that ability. Sometimes, and I know that one of the things that we hear a lot is, well, District X offers, they pay for the entire insurance. Maybe they do, but they may only offer one option. And it may be that it's a $2,500 deductible.
But we haven't always had the 4 options though.
Right.
That's just, I mean, and we didn't have prescriptions 7 years ago either.
Right, and those are,
So those were chances where we
right,
could have.
right. And to be honest with you, when we look at with, and this is one of those things, I want to hear what you guys, always want to hear what you guys want. But like with the insurance, we could negotiate away some of the options and it might reduce what an increase is. But I think that's one of those things that right now we have fairly close to 25% in each one of the 4 categories. When you break it down, it's remarkable to me that it's as broken down almost evenly as what it is. And the challenge is that sometimes the different options are where you see the collective increase that they're talking about is 26%. But option 3 may be a 20% increase, and option 1 may be a 30% increase. So there's some variability within it. With the pool, you typically don't have as many options, and you don't have as much ability to determine what is important to us. You know, as Jill mentioned, we didn't used to have, and it was before me, so I don't know, and I'm gonna trust her, that we didn't used to have the drug plan.
We did.
No.
So that,
Very expensive
now I would say that's important. That's an important thing to have. The downside to being in a pool sometimes is if the pool collectively doesn't go that way, then your option is, well, you either go with the group or you go out and get your own. So that's the downside to it. Here's the other thing. With pools, they usually have criteria to accept you.
Well, and that's what you were talking about with that one that you were looking at.
Right, and I think we have a couple of claims, which I think, I don't know that I'm that good of a smooth talker to convince them that that they need to just be all right, you know? But I think we want to continue to look at that. The one pool that I have in mind, there is more flexibility. And it's not so big that we would be just one of many. We would be one of quite a few. So you have a little more ability to do that. I would never want us to be in a position to where if we were to go to something like that, it didn't benefit us. And you're always going to give away a little bit of your voice and your ability to dictate what you want, but it's not necessarily something that we always want to do.
Okay. Just didn't know how all that stood.
No, that's all right. If you ever want to be bored to sleep, just come sit with me and we can do that.
Can I go back to duty days and ask a question?
Sure.
You mentioned the online versus in person.
Yes.
So are you saying you would rather have in person?
See, that's where it gets iffy. So it actually takes less time to do the online than it did to do the in-person.
Okay.
And so time-wise, we are probably spending less time doing the online than we would have done in person, especially when you add in how many trainings are now mandated than what used to be mandated. It used to just be a few trainings, like you used to have the bloodborne pathogen training and the like anti-bullying training. Like there was only a few that were mandated, and now it's a lot more. And so sitting through a specific training presentation for each one of those kind of makes my brain hurt a little bit.
Okay.
So in that case, yes, the online trainings would be are faster.
Okay.
But what you're actually just asking for is that when you have dedicated classroom time, you want that and that only. You
Yes.
don't want other administrators, like if you are a SPED teacher, you don't want another meeting for SPED to be included within that dedicated time. That's your time. Have your meetings outside of that. Is that what I'm
Correct.
hearing? Okay.
And I mean, I am going to.
And I just use SPED just.
Yes, I'm going to talk without talking to my group, but when you compare the amount of time that it takes to do those trainings, like if we were to agree that, okay, you get this, like if you were to have, like a building meeting in the morning, and then the rest of that morning is for online training, and then that afternoon is for classroom time, that honestly would probably be enough. But it's just having that time, knowing that, okay, I will be able to get these hammered out, get them done, and I don't have to worry about it. And the same thing happens. I know that sometimes we get trainings put on us in the middle of the year that are added to and put onto theirs. Well, we don't usually get time to do those trainings then. Like time is, for most of us, is set aside for the beginning of the year, but not necessarily for the middle of the year.
Okay. Thank you. Unless you just want to be super fabulous and do it on
Right.
And you kind of get tired of doing things on your own time?
A little.
Okay.
I get a little tired doing
Okay.
things
Did
on
that
my own
answer your question?
Yes, that did. Thank you.
Thank you for, may I say, thank you for asking questions.
Oh, you're
Well,
welcome.
thank you for taking the time to understand, like, what we have concerns with. It's refreshing.
You're
So
welcome.
thank you.
Yeah.
For asking
You're
questions. So
Absolutely.
that is good.
All right.
So we're tabling the health costs, right? The health insurance and.
Yeah, we're just gonna let you.
Just more information.
Marty working on
I
that.
Yeah, because
There's
it
a lot of
does
time
make,
talking to Blue Cross.
right, it does
Come
make
in
a
with
difference.
anything else?
And, may I ask my
I
next
think
question?
we're still interested in increasing it, obviously, but it'd be better if we had.
Right.
Members.
And we only have the one provider and then you have the 4 tiers, right? Like you
Correct.
don't have 2 different, okay,
Right,
just
yeah.
making sure.
Okay.
Blue Cross Blue Shield is currently our provider, and that's the 4 options.
I just live in a world to where we have other providers, so.
I will say, the company that I work for, we just went from Blue Cross to Cigna, and I was not happy, I'm like, wow.
It's,
It
and it's
has
a,
been
Wonderful.
amazing. Coverage is better, you get better answers. So just a plug there that I was really concerned about changing companies, and
And
Cigna was.
everyone takes in this area, like, I mean, like. doctors.
that would be my big
I mean, that
concern.
would-
That's the
yeah.
biggest
Yeah,
thing.
and they
Yeah.
pretty much, there were a couple, but not a whole lot of doctors that didn't take Cigna. So, yeah, it was a good experience.
That would be my.
Positive.
So Blue Cross Blue Shield has had a virtual monopoly for
Mhm.
Ever.
decades.
Yes.
And hopefully it will be better for all of us as consumers if that goes away.
Goes away, exactly.
But we'll see. We'll keep chipping away, and I figure we'll come back to that one. Because it does matter what the price is. Salary items.
Update on breakage.
Yes, I do. Well, it was, and then we had somebody that we had hired. I'm not sure it's all for this one. Yet, because they accepted the position and then told us that they would not be able to accept the position after.
So that position is open again.
Yes, and I don't know that it's reflected on here. Those of you guys discussed. Currently,
And it has what position it is?
It's a high school.
Give me the,
Okay.
give me the.
183,44 is what we have in the good to the good right now as far as dollars. But that would actually be higher than that because there's another position, obviously.
Marty, you're really slacking on
I know.
passing out.
I know,
You're losing your touch on that.
way too slow. And somehow I printed
Extra pages.
a blank page that slowed me down even more.
Sure to recycle
And the
them.
positions, they're making some adjustments as far as that. I'd hoped to clean that up this week for you, and I got busy with some other things. Now I say that there are some positions that have not been filled, which we are still trying to. If we did, if we filled them all, which I'm going to be very honest, and I think at this point that is unlikely, then we could be as close as $10,000. I think still to the positive, but so we're anywhere from about 225,000 to 10,000, depending on how many of those we fill.
Okay, I'm wondering about admin breakage, because I know that we are an admin short.
Right, and that wouldn't have been on there. That,
That's correct, with Mrs. Fernandez Flores leaving,
right,
and we did not replace her.
Right.
There should be
Tons.
some
No.
money.
and I can get that, and we can have it next time.
Thank you.
And I'll give
Did
you,
Logan not replace Bridget as a sixth grade teacher?
well, and some of those,
Or is that the bottom one that's? No.
right, some of them have been,
Right.
Have moved some positions.
Oh, never mind, I found it.
Yeah.
You're good.
It's all, yeah. We've had a lot of internal movement.
Okay.
more
So
than
there's
normal.
like, yeah, there's like the replacement is someone in house and then the
Right,
person
and then
that's
it's
like,
like-
it's, yeah.
And poor Jenny kept coming to me, okay, where's this person going? So, and that's, take a look at that, then give you a little bit of an opportunity. And again, it's still tentative because we could drop down to a $10,000 positive, or we could go up to 225 roughly.
Okay.
I'm going to throw out this next idea, and this is just kind of a food for thought, and I want you to take a little bit of time to think about it. Something that we have kind of kicked around is the idea of potentially adding a column that would be an MA 60,
Mhm.
PhD, EDS, whatever, all those other things beyond MA 45. And the idea being that we would add that. And here's where I want you guys to have a little bit of time to think about it. The potential to add that, but you wouldn't actually see anybody move into it until next year. Because everything we've done for column movement and everything is done. So there wouldn't be anybody that would have applied for that one because nobody would have. And the movement part of it, they're just, you know what I'm saying? It's, well, potentially, we've got,
I mean,
and I'm just saying, MA 45Z, we've got like 45 people.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be,
And not all of them.
it wouldn't be,
moved.
no, it wouldn't be everybody, because you've got people who just moved in there the last few years, so they don't have it, but we do have some people who have hundreds of points that are sitting in that spot.
Right.
That would be able to.
Is
move.
Mike one of those?
Probably, yes.
And they're one.
I'm maxed out.
Okay.
To go up to 3 million.
Well, and the reality is some of those
Several
folks
years.
haven't done anything with PD points because they were maxed out.
Right.
So that's something, that's just to plant a seed for you to think about. What would that look like and how would that work? And then that way it gives you an opportunity to come up with some questions. And there may be questions that
I have one question off the top of my head. So currently in our MA 45, we have it that says, okay, your first year you move into MA 45, well, MA 45Z, you move in there and you have your movement from, you have your cell increase, but then you also have your movement increase and you're good. But then the next year, we did a thing where that following year, you get your cell increase and then you get $1,000.
right after 2 years, you get the $1,000.
Right. And then, so we would need to look at,
Right.
since that's not the end of the schedule anymore.
And that would be one of the things I think we would have to connect. We would have to figure out probably one of those things where maybe it would be, we would leave it that way for 2 years and then it would move to that other column.
Mhm.
After, does that make sense?
Yeah.
They would finish out that, but then it would no longer apply to MA 45Z, but would apply to the MA 60.
Mhm.
Would be my thought. So it wouldn't go away, but it would shift, but it wouldn't shift instantly.
Right.
It would shift.
We would need to look at numbers because like those people in the MA 45Z, if they've already gotten it, they're used to, Like, and
Right.
it's really confusing. I answer this question every single year. I get emails about it. And I get it. It's confusing. Because I say, well, it's not on the salary schedule. You have that $1,000, but you constantly have that $1,000. It's not like what am I thinking of? It's not what, it doesn't accumulate.
Right. It doesn't, unlike longevity.
Thank you, longevity. So,
Which does accumulate.
right. So I go, but you don't want them to take it away because then you will not have that $1,000. So I would think when doing that last column, we would need to take into consideration those people who have it, and then make sure that when we put in that column, that they still get a raise, knowing that even though they.
Well, and those are the things that I want you guys to think about. And again, it's an idea. It's just a thought provoker. Because I think we need to try and figure out ways to improve the salary schedule.
And we do not disagree.
And that may be a way.
Yeah.
But as you know, it's complicated.
It
It's not
is.
as simple as just,
No.
because
But I know
everything we
where you're
do
going.
has
It's
a
like you
trickle
have to
effect.
figure out what that transition is going to be.
Right, because usually,
Those-
there's a certain amount between each
Mhm.
column in that cell, but then, like, let's say there's like 1,750. Well, yeah, if you were in 45, if you were in MA 45 and you just moved into it, and then 3 years later you get to move in, or 4 years later, however long you get to move into MA 60, it is a $1,750 increase for you. But if you've been stuck in MA 45 and you were getting that $1,000,
What's that?
when you move into
Right.
it, it's only a $750 increase for
Right.
you.
Yeah.
And so that is something that I would want to think about.
Yeah,
And
and that's why I throw it out
Perfect.
now. And it may not be, something that we can accomplish, but I think as we go forward, and to let you guys know that we are thinking, how can we fix the schedule?
Right.
So, and the next thing, the salaries. Do you have anything?
We haven't,
that you're
I mean, you had what you gave us last time, but you were gonna get us breakage, and so I think now that we have a bigger picture, we can probably talk as a group about that, and then maybe that's something that we can talk a little bit more about next time.
Absolutely. Any other items?
You had talked before about what was it on that one? Supplementals.
Yes.
And you didn't know if you were going to have a proposal about supplementals or what.
Yeah, as far as we looked at it, our supplementals are very competitive with everybody else's. I think we're when you look regionally, we're in the top 3 with most everybody. A lot of them, we are the #1 supplemental. So I don't know that we feel like it is one that we feel like there's a need at this point to make any adjustments unless you have a specific supplemental that you have in mind.
I don't necessarily have a specific supplemental that we currently have in mind. However, it was brought to my attention. A couple of things were brought to my attention at the very end of the year. The first one is that our coaches in the past had been coming back early, and I think maybe getting hourly pay or getting something for that. And I didn't know if there was any talk or any desire to have an iCoaches with like a 2-day, like say a contract or a 2-day, so like something along those lines.
I would guess if it's something we do every year, then we probably would need to look at the extending the contract, adding days to the contract. Because if it's going to be a consistent thing every year after year, then that makes more sense than anything else probably.
Okay.
And it compels those people to then go ahead and do it too.
Right.
Instead of 186, it's 188. Well, now I did want to do it for those, and I just used 2 days.
Right, yeah.
But as opposed to if it's a supplemental, well, I really want to take my vacation and I'm not going to
Right.
get back in time. That becomes more challenging.
I just know that-
It's probably cleaner if we just added.
I just know that they have traditionally come back early to work on the planning and everything for the beginning of the school meetings and some of the trainings and whatnot. And you will probably want to do some checking with the powers that be who live in this building on what that might look like, or if that's even needed or whatever, but,
We can do that.
okay. Another, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
We still got that one.
No.
Oh, okay. Another one that was brought to my attention is that last year we increased sped. And the sped, but that we did not touch related services. And I didn't know if there was any interest in touching related services this year.
I think probably interested in.
And can you clarify for me, Frank Kim, I know is an SLP who's leaving in the hired service, 98,000. Karen Watson, I don't know what Karen does, I apologize. Speech, so we have 2 speech SLPs that have left, but an increase of like
About
60,
100,
a lot. That seems
The,
kind of extreme.
to get the service because there aren't any applicants. To do the service and to contract with the company for the full time, which with Frank M is almost $100,000.
Right, 98,000.
Right, and the other one was, I think, 3 days a week. And that's like 58, 60,000, something like that.
59.
Yeah.
So instead of hiring, because there isn't anyone, we're
But it's still
hiring
a cost, right?
Using a
a
service.
We're using a
service.
service that will offer that service to the students.
Because which is providing which service, sorry? Which
Speech services?
SLP, yeah.
Okay, so
An outside service.
So we're required to provide the service, but we don't have
Correct.
applications, and so therefore we have to go this direction.
Correct.
Okay,
Our preference would be to hire.
hire a speech,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I'd much rather have it.
Does Greenbush offer that?
I'll be honest, I don't know what it's through.
I didn't know if they
Did you
go
find out?
specific or if it's.
I can find out who it's through, but I know there aren't a lot of places that would have it, so.
Okay.
I didn't know if they provided that.
Okay. Do we want to talk next meeting?
Yeah. What do you think about next Thursday, that's the 20th at 4:30? Does that work? I think for these ladies, the Wednesdays work better.
I think, yeah, you know, I don't.
Should be fine.
Right?
I'm good.
Let's plan on that. And thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for putting up with our questions.
Yeah, I'm so
Thanks
sorry.
for asking them.